Justice Alsup's smirk had once seemed unshakable, a symbol of authority and arrogance. But Jasmine Crockett's poised, devastating comeback transformed that moment into something unforgettable. It wasn't just a legal victory. It was a moral triumph, a statement that dignity, preparation, and integrity can silence even the most confident displays of arrogance. The courtroom drama has become more than a story. It is now a lesson in courage, composure, and principled action. And this is where you come in. Moments like these aren't meant to be witnessed alone. They are meant to be shared, discussed, and celebrated. By subscribing, you ensure you'll see more stories where heroes rise, where truth prevails, and where ordinary courage inspires extraordinary change. Every share spreads a message that integrity and calm resolve still have power in a world too often captivated by ego and bluster. Imagine the impact when your network, your friends, your family witness a moment like this. Imagine the conversation sparked, the inspiration planted, and the recognition that dignity matters. Jasmine's victory is a blueprint for resilience, a reminder that every challenge can be met with preparation, poise, and principle. It's not just her story. It's a story for anyone who has faced doubt, intimidation, or systemic obstacles. So take action now. Subscribe to witness more moments where dignity silences arrogance. Share this story, because the world needs heroes like Jasmine Crockett, examples of courage, intelligence, and moral clarity that can reshape culture, influence conversations, and inspire generations. Every click, every share, every conversation keeps the momentum alive. Justice Alsup smirked, but history will remember Jasmine Crockett. And now, so will the world. Thanks to you, the courtroom had quieted, but the lesson lingered far beyond the walls. Jasmine Crockett's triumph was more than a personal victory. It was a testament to the enduring power of calm, dignity, and preparation in the face of arrogance. In that space, she had demonstrated a universal truth, that composure and moral clarity often speak louder than force, volume, or ego. Her victory was not only legal, it was symbolic, a reminder that true authority is earned through integrity and courage, not smirks or status. Observers reflected on the magnitude of what had transpired. Every pause, every carefully chosen word, every unflinching moment of control had illustrated that confidence rooted in principle can withstand even the most formidable opposition. It was a moment that transcended the courtroom, offering a blueprint for anyone facing systemic challenges, personal trials, or confrontations with arrogance in any form. When the world tests your composure, remember who you are. The story seemed to whisper and act with intention, integrity, and clarity. The implications reached beyond the legal sphere. Civic engagement, public service, and advocacy were all illuminated by Jasmine's example. She had modeled how careful preparation, dedication, and ethical grounding could not only meet but transform power structures. For those watching, it became clear. Courage is not always loud or confrontational. It is deliberate, informed, and principled when approached with honesty and commitment. Even the most entrenched systems can be challenged, and change can emerge not from bluster, but from the force of reason, ethical action. Jasmine's performance underscored another vital lesson. Representation matters. Her presence in the courtroom was not just about legal argumentation. It was about embodying the voices, experiences, and struggles of those who had long been marginalized. Every carefully articulated point reinforced the truth that visibility and integrity can inspire others, creating a ripple effect far beyond the immediate moment. For immigrant communities, young professionals, and advocates of social justice, her example served as validation. Dignity, preparation, and moral courage are tools that can shape outcomes, influence culture, and redefine narratives. In reflecting on the confrontation, one truth became undeniable. Arrogance, no matter how confident or institutionalized, is vulnerable when faced with clarity and calm determination. Jasmine's victory was a reminder that success is rarely about overpowering opponents. It is about understanding the terrain, preparing thoroughly, and delivering one's truth with composure and conviction. In every arena, political, professional, or personal, this principle resonates. It is a call to action, a template for those who wish to confront challenges without sacrificing integrity. Her triumph also highlighted the importance of accountability. Justice Alsup's smirk, once a symbol of dominance, had been challenged not with spectacle or attack, but with reason, empathy, and unwavering focus. The moment demonstrated that systems, institutions, and individuals can be held to higher standards through clarity, preparation, and moral fortitude. For viewers, it was a lesson in the power of deliberate action and the impact of embodying values consistently, even under intense pressure. The story of Jasmine Crockett's courtroom moment became a metaphor for life itself. The battles we face, whether public or private, are best approached with patience, intellect, and integrity. Her victory encouraged reflection, inspiring viewers to consider how they might respond to challenges in their own lives. How could they meet arrogance not with fear or anger, but with prepared, principled action? How could they transform obstacles into moments of affirmation, both for themselves and the communities they represent? In the end, the courtroom drama crystallized a universal, uplifting message. Dignity, preparation, and moral courage are timeless forces. When applied consistently, they create impact far greater than any fleeting display of arrogance or authority. For those who watched, who shared, who reflected, Jasmine's performance offered not just admiration, but empowerment, a guiding principle for navigating challenges in any sphere. As the echoes of her words reverberated, one truth lingered above all. When confronted with arrogance, injustice, or intimidation, the most powerful response is not confrontation for its own sake, but the quiet, steady assertion of truth. It is a calm, unshakable confidence of someone who knows their worth, understands their purpose, and refuses to be diminished. And with that lesson, the story prepared the audience for the final reflection, the closing call to action, and the invitation to carry this inspiration forward into the world. The courtroom had emptied, but the energy it generated refused to dissipate. As soon as the doors closed behind the last spectator, the moment exploded across social media. Screens lit up with hashtags. Hashtag dignity over arrogance. Hashtag Jasmine Crockett. Hashtag mic drop moment. Within minutes, the conversation had gone global. Clips of her poised, devastating rebuttals circulated across platforms, each replay amplifying the impact. Each share a digital affirmation of triumph. Journalists scrambled to capture the narrative. Justice meets its match, one headline declared. Another, Jasmine Crockett silences a smirk and the nation takes note. Commentators dissected her every word, her every pause, marveling at the seamless fusion of intellect, preparation, and moral authority. The story transcended the courtroom. It became an emblem of a larger cultural truth, that dignity and preparation could dismantle arrogance in any arena. Celebrities and thought leaders joined the chorus. Tweets and posts poured in, praising not just the legal brilliance, but the character behind it. Watching her today was witnessing grace in action, one actor wrote. She didn't just win a case. She reminded the world what true leadership looks like. Memes spread with lightning speed, capturing the juxtaposition of Alsup's fading smirk against Jasmine's calm, authoritative presence. In each iteration, she became the symbol of composure, intellect, and moral clarity, a hero of poise in a moment defined by tension and challenge. Audiences felt validation in real time. Comments flooded in from young professionals, immigrants, and activists who saw themselves reflected in Jasmine's journey. Finally, someone shows that preparation and dignity matter more than status or smirks, wrote one user. She gave hope that courage and integrity still count in a world obsessed with power displays, wrote another. Every like, every retweet, every reaction built momentum, reinforcing the narrative that Jasmine's triumph was as moral as it was cinematic. Media outlets replayed the highlights endlessly, each clip punctuated with slow-motion close-ups, courtroom murmurs, and the subtle but undeniable shift in Alsup's demeanor. The moment became a teaching tool, an example cited in law schools, debate clubs, and civic programs. Analysts marveled at how quickly a single courtroom confrontation had transcended its immediate context, becoming a story that inspired conversation about fairness, civility, and the enduring power of calm authority. Even beyond social media, the ripple effect was undeniable. Legal forums buzzed with discussion about her strategy. Political talk shows debated the implications of her approach. Community groups shared her story as a demonstration that preparation, courage, and integrity could overturn entrenched power dynamics. Jasmine had become more than a lawyer winning a case. She had become a cultural symbol, a touchstone for collective aspiration. The visual impact, amplified by memes and viral clips, reinforced a narrative. One imagined meme juxtaposed Alsup's smirk with Jasmine's serene focus. Captioned simply, "Confidence versus composure. Composure wins." Another circulated widely. "She didn't shout, she didn't attack. She conquered with truth." Each share carried an emotional charge: pride, admiration, and a sense of communal vindication. The courtroom drama had become a shared experience, uniting viewers across demographics, geography, and ideology in awe of what had just transpired. Even those who had doubted her early on found themselves swept up in the wave of recognition. Social validation multiplied exponentially as viewers reflected not only on Jasmine's legal skill but on the qualities she embodied: resilience, moral clarity, and steadfast commitment to justice. The narrative was no longer confined to a single case. It had evolved into a story of representation, empowerment, and the enduring impact of courage in the face of authority. By the time the evening news cycles began, Jasmine's moment had already been etched into the collective consciousness. News anchors recounted the courtroom exchanges, interviews analyzed her strategy, and opinion pieces celebrated the symbolic victory she represented. Every retelling emphasized the contrast between arrogance and dignity, power and preparation, ego and composure. The hero of the day was unmistakable, and the nation collectively felt the resonance of her triumph. The aftermath was not merely about recognition. It was about transformation. For the audience, the ripple effect of admiration, validation, and inspiration had only just begun. Conversations in offices, homes, and online communities centered on what had occurred, solidifying Jasmine as a figure whose actions transcended a single courtroom. She had delivered more than legal argument. She had delivered proof that calm, dignity, and meticulous preparation could shatter assumptions and leave an indelible mark on public consciousness. And as the world absorbed the scale of her impact, a subtle anticipation lingered. What lessons, what reflections, what broader truths would emerge from this defining moment? The story was far from over. The courtroom drama had concluded, but the echoes of pride, admiration, and collective inspiration were just beginning to resonate, setting the stage for the universal insights that were about to crystallize. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath as Jasmine Crockett straightened, her calm unwavering, her eyes steady on Justice Alsup. Every person present felt the electricity of the moment. It was as if time itself had paused to witness what was about to unfold. Alsup, confident only a moment ago, now faced a presence that refused to be intimidated, a force of intellect and moral authority that radiated with every measured breath Jasmine took. She began to speak, her words deliberate, clear, and incisive. There was no flourish, no unnecessary theatrics, only the precision of someone who had anticipated every angle, every objection, every trap laid before her. Her argument cut through the room like a scalpel, dissecting assumptions, exposing contradictions, and challenging authority not with aggression, but with undeniable logic and clarity. Each sentence landed with weight, a quiet but undeniable assertion of mastery. For a moment, the courtroom held its breath. Then the impossible happened. Alsup's smirk faltered, just slightly at first, almost imperceptibly, but enough for the room to sense a crack in the armor. Every eye followed the subtle shift, every whisper, every suppressed murmur catching the shift in power. The confidence that had seemed unassailable was now wavering, and the audience could feel it. Social media feeds imagined in real time were ablaze. Hashtag Jasmine wins, hashtag dignity over arrogance. Trending hashtags capturing the collective awe of millions watching. Jasmine continued, each word precise strike. She referenced precedents, highlighted contradictions, and exposed gaps in the reasoning that Alsup had once wielded as unquestionable authority. Her voice remained steady, but every pause was deliberate, allowing the weight of her points to sink in, each sentence hanging in the air like a silent verdict waiting to be acknowledged. The gallery leaned forward, some holding their breath, some clutching notebooks, all captivated by the unfolding spectacle. As she methodically unraveled the assumptions before her, Alsup's composure began to fray. His interruptions, once confident and sharp, became hesitant. His questions, once cutting, now reflected a subtle, growing uncertainty. Each rebuttal Jasmine offered was not merely a defense. It was a demonstration of command, a careful dismantling of arrogance with calm, reasoned authority. The tension in the room escalated, a charged atmosphere where admiration, shock, and awe intermingled. The audience sensed something historic. Phones captured every gesture, every carefully chosen phrase. Imagine tweets and posts spread like wildfire. Did you see that pause? She just dismantled him without raising her voice. This is what composure and preparation look like. Memes began forming in the collective imagination. Justice Alsup's smirk juxtaposed with Jasmine's serene intensity. Every reaction amplified the impact of her words, turning a courtroom exchange into a moment of viral, cultural resonance. At one critical juncture, Jasmine paused, letting the courtroom absorb the full measure of her argument. The silence was deafening, pregnant with anticipation. For a heartbeat, time seemed suspended. And then she delivered a line that would be remembered, a concise, devastating articulation of truth and principle that left even the most seasoned observers in awe. The smirk that had once symbolized authority and control dissolved, replaced by a fleeting flicker of disbelief. The courtroom shifted in collective acknowledgement. The tide had turned, and it had turned decisively. Reactions rippled outward. Some spectators gasped audibly, some whispered in disbelief, and some simply sat back, eyes wide, absorbing the magnitude of what had just occurred. Social media, alive with speculation and instant analysis, erupted. Hashtags trended within minutes, and commentators marveled at the calm precision with which Jasmine had dismantled authority. Celebrities and thought leaders imagined themselves following a live feed, shared their amazement. A masterclass in poise and intellect, one post read. "This is how dignity triumphs over arrogance," another declared. Every exchange had been studied in contrast. Alsup, the emblem of centuries of institutional authority, now visibly rattled. Jasmine, the embodiment of preparation, integrity, and moral clarity, standing resolute. The room seemed to recognize it instinctively. The air vibrated with collective realization. This was more than legal argument. It was a demonstration of the power of calm, of intellect, and of unwavering principle against the weight of arrogance. Even as she concluded, the echoes of her words lingered. The courtroom remained suspended in disbelief, the tension replaced by a mix of relief, awe, and admiration. Those present felt as if they had witnessed a pivotal moment, one that would be referenced in discussions of justice, composure, and courage for years to come. The smirk was gone. Authority had been challenged, not with spectacle or aggression, but with quiet, undeniable command. And yet, the ripples had only begun. The courtroom reactions, the murmurs, the imagined social media frenzy, all hinted at a far-reaching impact beyond this room. What Jasmine had done here would not remain confined to legal precedent or political discourse. It was a cultural moment, a testament to the idea that preparation, integrity, and calm authority could dismantle arrogance in real time. The audience, both present and watching in spirit, sensed that the narrative was shifting. The moment was historic, the victory moral, and the consequences inevitable. By the time Jasmine stepped back from the podium, the courtroom understood it fully. Dignity had prevailed. Authority had been challenged and met with the force of reason, composure, and principle. The smirk that had opened a confrontation was gone, replaced by a sober acknowledgement of skill, preparation, and truth. And while the room began to stir and whispers and applause quietly spread, the sense of awe remained, a collective recognition that something extraordinary had just unfolded, a moment that would ripple far beyond these walls, shaping conversations, inspiring admiration, and etching itself into memory. The room was electric, every breath measured, every eye fixed on the podium where Jasmine Crockett now stood. Justice Alsop leaned back slightly in his chair, the smirk still lingering, a quiet signal that he intended to dominate, to unsettle, to remind everyone that he was in control. He began with a question sharp enough to cut through the tension. Precise, pointed, designed to provoke a reaction. Jasmine met it with calm, her voice steady, unwavering. She answered not with defiance, but with precision, each word chosen like a carefully placed chess move. The audience felt the contrast instantly, the smirk versus the serenity, the arrogance versus the poise. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Some leaned forward, sensing the tension. Others instinctively reached for their phones, ready to capture a moment that could become a talking point for days. Alsop raised an eyebrow, a subtle, almost imperceptible challenge. He interrupted, testing her composure, expecting a crack, a falter, a trace of hesitation. But Jasmine maintained eye contact, her pauses deliberate, calculated. Every interruption was met with measured rebuttal, every challenge deflected with grace and undeniable logic. It was a kind of display that forced observers to acknowledge her command of the moment, not as a student, not as an opponent, but as someone who belonged entirely in that space. The exchanges escalated. Alsup's questions became sharper, edged with subtle impatience. The courtroom felt it, the tension climbing with each word. Social media feeds, imagine the mind of the spectators, were already alive. Hashtags forming in real time, comments flowing like a digital undercurrent. She's calm. He's smirking. Who's really in control here? One imagined tweet might read. Another could note, watch how she doesn't even flinch. This is next level composure. Every micro-conflict was a pulse of drama, a brief smirk from Alsup, a raised hand, a pointed interruption. Each intended to unbalance Jasmine, but each met with an immovable wall of composure. The gallery shifted in their seats, some unable to look away, caught between admiration and disbelief. Even the clerk's hand hesitated mid-note, sensing the performance unfolding with every exchange. At one point, Alsup's tone sharpened, an almost imperceptible edge betraying the first signs of irritation. He had expected control. He had expected hesitation. What he did not expect was the measured force of someone who had anticipated every angle, every potential provocation. Jasmine's eyes remained steady, her voice unwavering, each word landing like a quiet but undeniable assertion of authority. The tension was palpable. The courtroom seemed suspended in a fragile equilibrium, a balance between the villain's crafted dominance and the hero's serene counterweight. Every interruption, every carefully crafted question from Alsup served only to highlight the depth of her preparation. For the audience, both present and imagined across screens and feeds, it was clear that this was more than legal argument. It was a test of character, intellect, and the power of composure over ego. As the exchanges continued, the smirk that had defined Alsup's early confidence began to falter ever so slightly. A pause lingered, a hesitation barely noticeable, yet unmistakable to those attuned to the subtle rhythms of power. Jasmine's calm was not passive. It was a force, an unspoken assertion that control had quietly shifted. The audience could feel it. The moment approaching when the composed intellect would no longer merely withstand arrogance, but would begin to dismantle it piece by piece. And in that charged silence, the room sensed it. The calm that had held steady through the storm of interruptions, challenges, and microaggressions was about to become unstoppable. Every eye, every whispered speculation, every imagined social media post braced for the inevitable moment when dignity would meet arrogance and triumph in a way that would echo far beyond the walls of this courtroom. Jasmine Crockett's story did not begin in the marble-lined corridors of the courthouse. It began in neighborhoods where resilience was a necessity, where opportunity often felt like a distant promise, and where the weight of expectation could either crush ambition or forge it. From an early age, Jasmine understood the value of perseverance. Her parents, immigrants who had come seeking better lives, instilled in her the belief that dignity, intellect, and moral clarity could carve paths even in the face of systemic obstacles. It was this foundation that shaped the woman who would one day walk into a courtroom facing one of the most intimidating figures in the judiciary. Her academic journey was one of both excellence and tenacity. She navigated schools that were under-resourced, where resources were scarce, and every success was hard-earned. But Jasmine approached each challenge with a rare combination of discipline and curiosity. She excelled not merely to prove others wrong, but to honor the sacrifices of her family and the communities she carried in her heart. Scholarships, mentorships, and long nights of study became the building blocks of a young woman who understood that intelligence alone was insufficient without integrity and purpose. Early in her career, Jasmine faced setbacks that would have derailed many. She encountered bureaucratic obstacles, systemic bias, and colleagues who underestimated her because of her background, her gender, or the communities she represented. Yet each hurdle reinforced her resolve. Instead of fostering bitterness, it honed her ability to remain composed, to speak with precision, and to wield truth as both shield and weapon. Those formative experiences were not just professional trials. They were lessons in empathy, patience, and strategic thinking. She learned to see beyond immediate skirmish, to anticipate the larger picture and confront power with both courage and poise. Her public service career reflected the same ethos. Jasmine chose roles that mattered, where impact outweighed personal gain. She championed causes that others avoided, representing communities that had long been ignored or marginalized. Each case she undertook was more than a legal fight. It was a fight for justice, representation, and affirmation of human dignity. She carried the voices of the unheard, the stories of struggle, and the hopes of those who had been sidelined into every courtroom, every negotiation, every argument. Even outside the courtroom, Jasmine's life was marked by personal sacrifice. She worked tirelessly, often at the expense of personal comfort or leisure, because she understood the stakes. For her, leadership was never about recognition. It was about responsibility, about ensuring that every action could be defended not only legally but morally. These choices defined her, shaping a reputation for integrity that preceded her every appearance and made her a figure of admiration in communities nationwide. By the time she stepped into the courtroom to face Justice Alsup, viewers could sense that this was not merely a legal battle. Jasmine carried with her the weight of history, of expectation, and of principle. She was calm, intelligent, and morally grounded, a stark contrast to the arrogance she faced across the bench. Her presence alone commanded attention, not because of theatrics, but because of the aura of unshakable preparation. She exuded a quiet confidence that spoke volumes. She knew her material, she knew the law, and, most importantly, she knew herself. Her preparation was meticulous. Every precedent, every potential objection, every argument Alsop might deploy had been anticipated. But her strategy was not rooted in arrogance. It was rooted in responsibility. She understood that this moment was bigger than herself. It was a test of whether dignity and truth could withstand the pressure of entrenched authority, whether calm intellect could dismantle centuries of unquestioned assumption. The tension was almost tangible. The audience, the courtroom, the viewers at home, all could sense that the coming exchange would not be ordinary. As she approached the podium, there was a subtle but unmistakable shift in the energy of the room. The weight of Alsop's reputation lingered, but Jasmine's aura of preparation, integrity, and resolve began to tip the balance. Every eye followed her movements. Every camera lens framed her deliberate gestures, and the room, knowingly or not, prepared itself for a confrontation that would resonate far beyond this day. Social media feeds were already buzzing, the whispers of recognition and admiration spreading like wildfire. By the time Jasmine opened her mouth, the courtroom knew the stakes. She wasn't just defending a case. She was defending dignity itself. Her journey, her sacrifices, her intelligence, her moral clarity gave her the authority to do so. And while the audience anticipated every word, Justice Alsop's smirk, so confident and unyielding just moments ago, now seemed less a shield and more a challenge. The clash was imminent, and the room held its breath, suspended between anticipation and awe, knowing that what happened next could alter the narrative in ways that would ripple for years to come. Justice William Alsop was a man whose reputation preceded him long before he entered any courtroom. Years on the bench had forged him into a figure of authority that commanded both respect and trepidation. To the casual observer, he was an embodiment of judicial gravitas, sharp, precise, and unflinchingly confident. But beneath the polished exterior, there was a streak of arrogance that often colored his interactions. Those who had faced him in court described a rare combination of intellect and subtle condescension. A man so secure in his legal prowess that he often underestimated the challengers who dared approach him. His career was studded with high-profile rulings, many praised for their technical brilliance, but some criticized for their tone, occasionally leaning toward cold detachment. Alsop had a reputation for cutting through arguments with surgical precision, but he had an equally infamous tendency to dismiss opposing perspectives with a dismissive smirk or a sharp word. Witnesses often left the courtroom shaken. Attorneys left questioning whether they had been outmaneuvered by intellect, intimidation, or both. His public persona suggested a man in control, yet whispered rumors among legal circles hinted at moments when Alsop's composure had been tested, when he was forced to confront arguments that challenged his assumptions. One such instance, often cited quietly by seasoned lawyers, involved a contentious civil case where an underdog attorney managed to expose a rare blind spot in his reasoning. The courtroom had been electrified with tension, the gallery aware that even Alsup was uncomfortably pushed to the edge of his patience. Though he ultimately maintained authority, the moment was a crack in the armor, a glimpse that beneath the steely facade, he could be rattled, however fleetingly. It was a kind of moment that lingered in whispers, a subtle foreshadowing that even a figure of immense power was not invincible. Alsup's demeanor was a study in contrasts. He could deliver legal lectures with calm, almost mesmerizing authority, yet a simple misstep by an opponent could provoke a visible tightening of the jaw, a flicker of irritation, a rare break his otherwise controlled exterior. Observers often noted his meticulous preparation. He expected the same precision from anyone challenging him. But when confidence morphed into underestimation, he sometimes left openings, small, almost imperceptible, but deadly in the hands of someone skilled. The public perception of Alsup reinforced the aura of intimidation. To many, he was a figure of unwavering judgment, a gatekeeper of law and civility. To others, particularly those outside traditional power structures, his smirk and occasional dismissiveness symbolized the barriers of elitism, the unspoken hierarchy that left challengers from marginalized or less recognized backgrounds doubting their footing. And yet, it was precisely this perception that amplified the stakes when someone like Jasmine Crockett stepped into the courtroom. She was a challenger from outside the expected order, armed not with intimidation, but with preparation, integrity, and an unshakable sense of justice. Alsop had faced talented lawyers before, yes, but few carried the combination of moral clarity and public gravitas that Jasmine possessed. He had often relied on intellect and reputation to dominate proceedings, assuming that authority alone could unbalance those before him. And more than once, that assumption had worked, until it hadn't. Those rare moments when his composure faltered became legendary in legal circles, whispered stories of an unassailable figure momentarily confronted with the possibility of being bested. It was these cracks in the armor, small yet significant, that set the stage for what was about to unfold. The courtroom was more than a stage. It was a theater of human ambition, ego, and principle. Alsop embodied decades of authority, a figure whose very presence could silence a room. But every hero needs a challenge, and every villain harbors a vulnerability. For Jasmine Crockett, Alsop represented not just the obstacle before her, but the entire system of assumptions she was determined to confront. His past victories, his public persona, his moments of controlled arrogance, all of it painted a picture of a formidable adversary. Yet those same victories carried within them the seeds of potential unraveling, the tiny fissures that only someone of Jasmine's caliber could detect, exploit, and transform into an unforgettable triumph. As the gallery settled, as the whispers lingered, it became clear the confrontation was not merely legal. It was personal, ideological, and symbolic. Alsup's legacy loomed like a shadow over the room, but Jasmine's approach promised a reckoning, a challenge to the arrogance that had so often gone unchecked. The stage was set, the tension palpable, and the audience, both present across the nation, held their breath, sensing that the next chapter would be unlike anything they had seen before. This was more than just a courtroom. It was a stage where law, politics, and public perception collided, and the tension was electric. Every word spoken here could ripple outward, shaping legal precedent, influencing public debate, and igniting conversations in living rooms and social media feeds across the country. Justice William Alsop was no ordinary judge. His reputation for sharp intellect, blunt authority, and occasional condescension preceded him. His smirk alone carried the weight of decades of courtroom dominance, a silent signal that he expected to dictate the terms of engagement. But Jasmine Crockett was not here to cower or conform. Known for her razor-sharp focus and unwavering poise, she had cultivated a reputation as someone who could speak truth to power without flinching. Her calm presence belied the intensity of her preparation. Every argument had been honed to perfection, every potential trap anticipated. For those watching, it was clear. This was a confrontation with stakes so high, a single misstep could redefine a career, a legal precedent, and even a cultural narrative for decades. The courtroom itself seemed to pulse with anticipation. Observers whispered among themselves, fully aware that this was no ordinary legal proceeding. Cameras captured every subtle expression, every measured gesture. Social media was already stirring. Journalists tweeted about the palpable tension. Commenters debated who held the moral high ground, and viewers at home sensed they were witnessing something historic. Everyone watching knew that a single misstep could change the narrative for decades. One whispered in awe, capturing the collective anxiety of the room. The stakes were layered. Legally, Jasmine was challenging assumptions that had gone unquestioned in certain cases, confronting precedents that shaped policy and civil rights interpretations. Politically, her performance would be dissected by pundits, activists, and the public alike, potentially influencing elections, endorsements, and public opinion. Culturally, this confrontation symbolized the ongoing struggle for representation, dignity, and the assertion of truth in the face of institutional arrogance. Every eye in the gallery understood that this was more than law. It was a test of character, a moral reckoning played out in front of a national audience. Alsup's smirk, so casual yet charged with authority, masked the pressure he too faced. The courtroom knew it. Jasmine's reputation was formidable, and her composure unnerving. She could unravel arrogance with facts, morality, and unassailable logic, and her history of public service gave her an aura of inevitability. Even the most confident observers sensed that the balance of power could shift with a single well-placed argument. Hints of what was coming lingered in the air like a storm on the horizon. Every pause, every deliberate glance, every moment of quiet before speaking was a prelude to a revelation that would leave the nation talking. The room seemed to acknowledge it instinctively. This confrontation would not remain confined to these walls. The eventual mic drop moment, the instant when composure met reckoning, was imminent. As the audience absorbed the weight of the stakes, the lens of history seemed to widen. This was not only about one courtroom victory. It was about narrative, about proving that calm dignity could counter arrogance, and that truth, once unleashed, could resonate far beyond the immediate moment. And while the focus had been on Jasmine, Alsup's own story, his past victories, his intellect, his subtle vulnerabilities, loomed just beyond the surface. His smirk, heavy with expectation, would soon reveal cracks that only someone of Jasmine's caliber could exploit. The room held its collective breath. Every spectator, every camera, every social media follower sensed it. What happened next could change everything. And in that charged silence, the stage was set for a confrontation that would be remembered long after the echoes faded. The courtroom fell into a hush so complete it felt like the world had stopped. Every eye fixed on the raised bench where Justice William Alsop sat, his posture casual, almost smug. And then he smirked. Not a fleeting smile, but a slow, deliberate curl of arrogance that seemed to challenge anyone daring enough to confront him. It was a kind of smirk that could freeze hearts and silence hope. But today, it would meet its match. From the back of the room, Jasmine Crockett stepped forward. Her heels clicked against the polished floor like a heartbeat in a quiet chamber. The sound echoed off the walls, pulling every gaze toward her. She moved with purpose, the calm certainty of someone who had faced countless obstacles and refused to bend. In that instant, she became more than an attorney. She became a symbol of integrity, a quiet storm in the eye of arrogance. The gallery shifted, some leaning forward, others clutching their notes, sensing that history was about to unfold before them. Every camera in the courtroom seemed to tilt in her direction, as if even the lenses recognized the gravity of the moment. Justice Alsup's smirk deepened, a silent dare. But Jasmine's eyes never wavered. She scanned the room, acknowledging the tension, letting it settle like a weight that demanded reckoning. A single whisper traveled through the spectators. "She's going to speak." And in that whisper, the room collectively held its breath. Social media notifications buzzed quietly in pockets, tweets drafted, cameras raised. Everyone instinctively sensing that a viral moment was forming, one that could ripple far beyond these walls. Alsup leaned back, folding his hands, his smirk now almost theatrical. The arrogance was palpable, like a storm cloud waiting to burst. But Jasmine Crockett was undeterred. She adjusted her notes with a deliberate calm, a subtle signal that she understood the rules of the game, and that she was about to rewrite them. And then silence. A pregnant pause that stretched just long enough for everyone to feel the weight of what was coming. The kind of pause that screams, something monumental is about to happen. What happened next would not only challenge a man of power, but it would shock an entire nation, leaving social media ablaze, conversations echoing in offices and homes alike. The room held its breath, and Jasmine Crockett opened her mouth,